In this WrestleTalk news, a potential buyer of WWE dropping out could hurt the sale of the company, which might also be the reason more cuts are being made. Could WWE be targeting AEW relationships, and more? Subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos.
Support WrestleTalk!
2023 kicked off with potentially the biggest story since Vince McMahon retired from the world of professional wrestling, when Vince McMahon returned to the world of professional wrestling. As has been previously reported, McMahon's return to WWE was denied by the board that was in place at the time, so McMahon got rid of that board and replaced it with one that wouldn't say no to him, using the sale of WWE as his way of getting back the control he lost when allegations came out against him over sexual misconduct and inappropriate use of company money. Then, of course, there was the huge report a couple of weeks ago that WWE was already in the process of being sold to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, reported by a couple of well-respected journalists in the field, but reports that were shot down by the likes of Ariel Helwani less than 24 hours later. There are still reported links between WWE and Saudi Arabia in regards to a sale, but they are also just a name in a long list of potential buyers, which also includes Disney, Amazon, Fox, and, let's not forget, AEW owner Tony Khan. You might recall there used to be another name in that list of potential buyers, NBC Universal, or rather their parent company Comcast, but it looks like something has recently changed there. A few days ago, Nick Khan, no relation to Tony, appeared on CNBC's Squawk in the Street to be interviewed by David Faber. Khan was grilled about McMahon coming back, and he was quick to deny any rumors that Vince was doing stuff creatively for the company, highlighting that Triple H is still in charge of all things creative. Khan also talked about doing the sale in the same year that WWE would be negotiating Raw and SmackDown TV deals made sense, because if they signed 5-year deals with networks like Fox and NBCU, that might put off potential digital buyers. But the key thing to highlight in this interview was Khan reiterating a point that was made during last Thursday's investors call, which was that Vince McMahon was willing to step down from his role in WWE once the sale has gone through if the new owners did not want him involved. It was this point that made Faber drop the bombshell. He's heard that Comcast, the company he works for, isn't interested in buying WWE anymore. Faber didn't say why or how he'd heard this, but when Khan said that WWE were being bullish with Comcast about a potential sale, Faber noted that he was unconvinced that McMahon would step down if pushed, again asking Khan if Vince would give up control for a sale. And Khan had to reiterate 100% without question that if the new owners wanted Vince to leave, Vince would leave. Again. But the news that Comcast potentially no longer wants to buy WWE could have a ripple effect on the sale as a whole. Dave Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio they need to make it look like people want them. But if word is out that Comcast doesn't, that might hurt the sale, because that might lower the value. Meltzer explained that NBC Universal are already in bed with WWE as Raw airs on USA Network, which is a program service owned by NBCU, who is owned by Comcast. So if a company that already works with WWE don't trust that Vince would step away, it could spook other potential buyers who aren't familiar with McMahon's style. And if Comcast do officially drop out, that would harm the sale price, as it would make WWE feel less desirable. As an example of this happening in the opposite direction, Comcast once upon a time were interested in buying 20th Century Fox, and that interest drove up the price when Disney eventually purchased them. And all of this might explain why WWE are making even more cuts. Thank you for your support on Patreon, Double L, Liam Leonard, and Mad Mac the Meat Father. Get your Patreon shout out over at patreon.com/WrestleTalk. A few weeks ago, it was reported that WWE had released a few people working in the office and personnel, most notably Adam Hopkins, who was beloved not just by the wrestling media who dealt with him directly in setting up interviews, but also the wrestlers, with Big E responding to Sean Ross Sapp reporting of the news, saying that he was a true professional and a great human. It was also reported that this firing was a hot topic of conversation backstage at WWE shows. Several other names were reportedly also cut from similar departments, with Dave Meltzer writing in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that there have been a lot more cuts on the corporate side in the past few weeks in different departments since the return of Vince McMahon. A key name in those cuts was Senior Vice President of International Matthew Drew, notable because he was a Nick Khan hire in 2021. Meltzer reports that all of these cuts are to do with the sale of the company, writing the belief is that these cuts are being made to lower the costs to get the company ready for a sale. So far, all of the cuts since Vince returned have been behind the scenes, and there's no word yet on whether this will extend to on-screen talent. However, it was speculated in 2021 that Braun Strowman being cut was done to lower costs for a potential sale, as his contract was much larger than a lot of other wrestlers. It's been reported that while morale backstage in WWE is higher than it has been in years, there are still some worries that cuts could be coming to the roster. On a more positive note though, Fightful Select reported that the backstage atmosphere of the Royal Rumble show was more laid back than it's been in years. Sean Ross Sapp writes, one talent that had noted to us that the process of the Rumble itself was the easiest in a long time without Vince McMahon at the helm, and that there were way less last-minute changes. But that's not the only big change in WWE since Vince McMahon stepped down last year. You know, before he came back. WWE's Shinsuke Nakamura wrestled at a Noah show in January as part of the Great Muta's retirement tour, and Carl Anderson defended and lost his never openweight championship at New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom just a few days later. WWE also worked with AAA in the signing of Dragon Lee, with the wrestler announcing he'd signed for WWE on a AAA show with WWE cameras filming the announcement, which came just one day after AEW's FTR lost the AAA Tag Team Championships to Dragon Lee, who then vacated them because he'd signed with WWE, and AEW Sammy Guevara and Ty Mello being stripped of their mixed tag team championships. It opened up the idea that WWE were willing to work with other companies and allow talent to work dates with independent promotions, something they've not previously really done. And the conversation about this heated up over the weekend when it was announced that NXT's Ivy Nile would be working Booker T's Reality of Wrestling this weekend. Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 tweeted of this announcement, NXT is going to allow talent to work select indies going forward, which is a pretty big deal. However, this report was quickly shot down following NXT's Vengeance Day show, as Shawn Michaels told Sean Ross Sapp in the post-show media scrum that there has been no talk of NXT talent working other indie shows, and Niall's appearance for ROW was a one-shot deal. That denial certainly makes it feel like it's an open and shut case, but that might not be accurate. Dave Meltzer expanded upon this story on Wrestling Observer Radio, noting that it's a little from column A and a little from column B. He said that ROW did ask for Ivy Nile to work the show as a one-shot deal, but they expect to get some NXT stars from time to time. He adds that Alvarez wasn't wrong with his report that NXT are going to allow talent to work other promotions, but this Ivy Nile appearance this weekend has to go well. If it does, then it opens up forbidden doors, as there are several companies that are being talked to with the idea they may be able to get NXT stars. And what's interesting about all of this is who WWE are talking to. Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio that WWE are talking to other companies about their talent working shows, and specifically that they are targeting companies that are close to AEW to see what they can do together. So if the Ivy Nile appearance does go well, and these conversations also go well, Dave Meltzer notes it could be something really bad for All Elite Wrestling. As Ollie Davis has speculated a lot on this channel in the last few months, this feels like another part of Triple H's master plan to upstage AEW. The previous narrative was that WWE was a fenced-off fortress from which there was no escape into the indie world, whereas AEW was a free-flowing greener grass field where you could work with companies like GCW, PWG, Warrior Wrestling, AAA, and others. But that narrative is starting to shift, and if those companies do start working with WWE instead of AEW, the appeal of signing with All Elite Wrestling starts to diminish. Let's not forget that last October there was lots of chatter about WWE starting a working relationship with GCW, with Brett Lauderdale joking that Stephanie McMahon was a close personal friend, and telling Wrestling Inc.'s Nick Hausman, Stephanie and the current regime there, I think they are very aware of what goes on in the wrestling world outside of just their bubble these days. What might start as an Ivy Nile one-shot appearance could be a bigger news story down the line. But that wasn't the only talking point from NXT NXT's Vengeance Day show, which saw Gallus win the NXT Tag Team Championships from New Day and Kiana James and Fallon Henley win the Women's Tag Team Championships, as well as Carmelo Hayes beating Apollo Crews 2-0 in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And it was Hayes who found himself in the center of some Twitter heat. You know, the realest and most serious kind of heat. Carmelo Hayes has been known to use the catchphrase "Mellow is money," which sounds a lot like Carmella's catchphrase of "Mella is money." Also spotting this was Carmella herself, who tweeted, "Can someone please tell Carmelo and Trick Williams to stop using my catchphrase?" Hayes, clearly playing it cool but pretending like he was dumb, responded, "Which one? TBH, I have a lot." Carmella, thinking she had him on the ropes, replied, "Great, so use one of your many others and stop using mine." But Hayes was simply playing possum, hitting the devastating finishing move of "True, I should switch them up. Using the same one gets stale after a while." At the time of writing, and I've been informed by the higher-ups at WrestleTalk that this is important information, Carmella's reply has 1,500 likes and has reached over 152,000 Twitter users, but Hayes' finishing blow has over 4,000 likes and has reached over 500,000 Twitter users. I believe the kids would call this ratioed. And by kids, I of course mean me, being so young and hip, I know exactly what that means. A reply to a tweet that gets more likes than the tweet it was replying to, usually indicating the unpopularity or stupidity of the original tweet. Oh, more you know, every day's a school day. Are we still rolling? But enough of that, here comes movies! Myself and Dan Layton were at the O2 Cineworld recently to go through this month's biggest releases, including Cocaine Bear, the 25th anniversary re-release of Titanic, and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Not only that, but Laurie Blake checked out the trailer for the new Ant-Man movie in 4DX. Here's a clip.
Coming up on today's show, we'll be taking you through all of the month's big releases, including Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
We'll be taking you on a date night for the 25th anniversary of Titanic.
And see what happens when we watch the trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in 4DX.